we're winning. That's the focus of tonight's angle.
Okay, so this is amazing. Laura Ingraham is trying to gaslight herself into believing that right-wingers are winning the popularity narrative across the country.
Now, in the GOP primary season, the two biggest dogs in the pen, they're already getting into it.
When the Ron DeSanctimonious facts come out, you will see that he's better than most Democrat governors, but very average at best compared to Republican governors who have done a fantastic job. Look at Disney and what a mess it is. Could have worked out an easy settlement, but no, he wanted to show the fake news how tough a guy he is.
The first example that she used on its face is absolutely ridiculous. This whole conflict between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis actually speaks to the deep unpopularity of the right and their willingness to just go completely off the deep end politically in order to service an increasingly extreme base while alienating the overwhelming majority of people. And when you throw on top of the fact that Ron DeSantis is deeply unlikable, and there's a huge effort to prop him up as some sort of alternative to Trump because some people are terrified that Trump might end up in prison, I think that's actually a pretty good sign that the right is not in fact winning. But of course, they depend on posturing as though they are, because their whole strongman aesthetic is fundamentally dependent on that perception of reality.
We should never forget that on key issues, we're winning. On the debt ceiling, Speaker McCarthy has the White House backed into a corner. I love this. Although Democrats rarely break ranks, there are signs now that Biden's coalition is cracking. So as the deadline nears for a deal, well, it's hard to see how Democrats with their slim Senate majority don't end up demanding that Biden cut a deal because their majority is on the line next election.
Okay, and so this whole part about the debt ceiling is absolutely ridiculous to claim as a win for Republicans because honestly, most Americans don't care about the debt limit. In fact, most people are actively confused by it because a lot of people in the media and politicians spin this narrative that the debt limit is all about making sure that we have a balanced budget, not recognizing the core reality that because the government just creates this money out of thin air, the debt limit really isn't reflective of anything real. In fact, in some sense, it's a measure of the growth of the economy, because the greater the national debt, the greater the amount of money circulating, and if that's actually paired with government spending that's doing the right thing, that's growing the economy. But they want to create this mythology of there being a very finite budget because they don't want regular working class people to get silly ideas that, you know, the government could actively help working class people. No, all the government's money has to be for corporate subsidies and tax breaks. And so ultimately, most Americans don't even understand that layer of it. And so this is not a win for conservatives. This is, if anything, a pretty extreme negative, because if we do hit some sort of debt limit, that just means conservatives passing a bunch of things that are deeply unpopular, that nobody wants, that are just more like corporate bailouts and stuff like that, instead of, you know, actually helping regular people.
And now, on top of all of this, you think about this in a historical context. The party of FDR and JFK has now become the party of gender mutilation for children. But this is backfiring on the Democrats hugely. Look at these headlines. I mean, one after the other. Transgender surgery, a ban advances in North Carolina, bans on transition care for young people spread across the United States, et cetera, et cetera. We didn't have enough time on the show to put all the headlines up. So we're eating their lunch on all of these issues.
And this last bit is probably one of the most evil and most disconnected from reality. Because, of course, if you look at the poll numbers, most people are against all of these anti-trans laws. Even most Republicans are against these anti-trans laws. It is just a small segment of the Republican base who also happen to have a small group of very well-funded anti-trans organizations pushing all of this, when most people are just like, yeah, let trans people just live their own lives. Most people are not like deeply transphobic and like actively seeking to exterminate trans people in the way these Republicans are trying to do by banning healthcare, banning trans people from public, and banning any mention of trans people in like public schools, for example. Most people are greatly against that. But right-wingers will tout these like, oh, the bill got passed, that must mean that people support it, because of course we all know that in the United States of America, if a bill passes, that means that everybody actually supports it, and definitely not that just like a group of like lobbyists and politicians agreed that they would be effective in one particular moment in time. Except for these bills are not effective in this moment in time, because if you actually look at the poll numbers and the way Democrats are responding at the polls and the way independents are responding at the polls, people are very much not satisfied with Republicans just throwing out trans people as like the priority number one and it is actively hurting Republicans' chances in the next set of elections. And so to tout that as a win, well, they're literally harming trans people across the country, putting people in an incredibly dangerous position, and doing it in such a way that is deeply, deeply unpopular. What you have is a lose-lose for humanity and the Republican Party at the same time, because of course, humanity suffers as a result of their cruel policies that are literally torturing people and in some cases forcing people to detransition. Well, also at the same time, the Republicans are sabotaging their own potential chances at winning. So when you really combine all these things, it's just this ridiculous string of claims that Laura Ingraham is making to try and make it seem like the right wing is winning, when actually they're losing pretty miserably. They're both losing, and political posturing, mind you, that rests on the harming of tons and tons of people, whether that be through denying working class people any type of benefits or supports at a time when the economy is very difficult for regular working class people, or the policies that they're aiming specifically at directly harming the lives of marginalized people, like the anti-trans laws that Republicans are trying to pass.